Hi, my name is Georgie, and you suck at After Effects. No, that doesn't work. Hey, welcome back. You're watching Making It Look Great number 5. My name is Multanen, and first thing I want to say is that if you got offended by the joke that I made at the beginning of this tutorial, then go ahead, open your browser and go to mydemchannel.com and look for You Suck at Photoshop. Then you'll know what I meant. And by the way, great work, Donnie. Or was it Ronnie? I don't know. Anyway, after torturing you with long, complex, extremely geeky tutorials, which I hope you've enjoyed anyway, I thought it's about time to do something faster, simpler, but yet still very valuable and useful. Therefore, I'd like you to consider the rest of this DVD as a dessert to the main course, which I've just served you in the last 5 tutorials. Okay, so in this one, we're going to talk about color correction. Very simple technique of color correction, but also very powerful, and I use it quite a lot. So let's just go ahead and drop this footage here. And this is actually a footage from a promo that I was working on for one of the Polish agencies that I'm working with called Timecode. Unfortunately, I can't show you the whole promo, but I got permission to show you just a few shots of it. So this is the footage that we'll be working with today. Pretty nice. It was originally shot in HD, but I did downscale it so it's easier to work with in this tutorial. Okay, so how do we do color correction? Well, I bet you have some kind of a preset just like I do. In my case, it's called Basic Color Tools, and it just consists of hue and saturation and curves. And this is something that usually gets you started with color correction. So what can we do here? We can, of course, add a little contrast curve, crushing the blacks a little bit, like that. Already looks better, right? But still, it is a little bit too green. So what can we do about that? We can try to move the hue saturation down, go to the greens, and maybe desaturate them a little bit. Maybe that'll change something. Not really, so maybe let's just try to increase the range here, and now you're seeing some changes. But on the other hand, it looks a little bit desaturated at this point. So what can we do to fix it? Well, the problem with this footage is that the dark tones, the shadows, are actually a little bit too bright. So we should isolate the shadows and adjust colors on the shadows only. So how can we do that? Well, the first way is to create a duplicate of this layer and apply tint effect to make this layer black and white. Then we can apply levels and crush the blacks a little bit. Also move the gamma so that we don't affect any of the highlights. I think that's actually pretty good. And the next step is to create an adjustment layer, put it between those two layers, and set its track matte to Luma Matte inverted, because we're interested in blacks, not in whites in this case. Okay, so far so good. And now we can go ahead and apply some curves. So just make the dark tones a little bit darker. We can add a contrast curve again. And let's just go to the greens and move them down just a little bit. And that way, we're restoring some of the gold colors that we have here. Okay, and that looks pretty good. But consider that you've got 3 layers. And what if you've got several shots you need to take care of in this little footage here? And we actually do have several shots. We've got this one, this one, and you can see we have a variety of shots that we need to take care of. So you would have to cut this layer using Ctrl-Shift-D to create a duplicate with a cut in here, and then create a duplicate of this, do the same thing again over and over, and you would end up with 3 times more layers you actually need. And that's never good. So what can we do to fix that? Let's just get rid of all those layers, restore the length of this one, and let me show you a cool trick. We're basically going to do the same thing but on a single layer. The technique behind it is pretty much the same, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. So first we need to isolate the dark tones. In your case, you might be interested in highlights or midtones, or both actually. This technique allows you to select several aspects of the same footage. So let's just apply Colorama, which I know from the comments on motionworks.com.au scares some of you for some reason. So consider this also a pretty short introduction to Colorama. Let's just apply it. As you can see, it's totally understandable that after seeing this, some of you get scared because there's no explanation to what's going on in this footage right now, right? Well, there actually is, but we're not going to get into that. The thing that you need to know is that you should set the preset here to ramp gray. Okay, now we've got a grayscaled image. That's pretty good. But you might ask, why aren't we using tint like we did before? Well, in tint, you can't actually set the alpha of a given color. In here, in Colorama, you can do that, and that's the key. So once again, we're interested in keeping the blacks. So we should modify the whites and set their alpha to 0, just like that. We can also add additional white color, set the alpha down to 0 again, and that way we're basically crushing the blacks just like we did using the levels. We can add a dark color in here, black, and make it 100% opaque so you can see what parts of the image we're affecting. Also, a key thing is to turn off composite over layer, and that way you see the alpha channel that we're creating. See, it's very nice how smooth it goes. Colorama is a really great effect and I use it quite a lot. Okay, I think we can go with this. So let's just close Colorama down and call this range selection. So the next step is to actually take that alpha and apply it to the original image. And if you've been watching the previous tutorials carefully, you know that we're going to use CC Composite to do that. And default settings will work just fine because we don't have the RGB only turned off, and that means we're actually applying the original pixels to the alpha created from the Colorama. So let's just call this effect copy pixels, like that. And let's apply another instance of CC Composite, call it restore, like that. And in this case, we need to turn the RGB only off. The footage looks pretty much the same as it did at the beginning, but there are a few things we need to adjust. Set the composite original for the restore part to behind. Nothing changes, but at this point, everything you will put in between copy pixels in restore will change the look of what range selector did select. So in other words, this black areas in here, this opaque areas in here. So let's just try that and apply curves. Let's just do a little bit of tweaking. Okay, looks very nice, but still it is a little bit too green. So let's just go ahead and go to the green curves and maybe just decrease their intensity, and that way a little bit of reds is coming in, and that means we are restoring some of the golds that we had here. And I actually like this look. See? Very simple, no additional layers, and we can easily go ahead and save this as a preset. And I already have this preset. It's called color correction selective, so I'm not going to override it. And the best thing about this is that if for some reason you want to do further adjustments to the range that you selected using Colorama, you can do that by applying other effects in between range selection and copy pixels. For example, let's use blur, fast blur, just to soften it up a little bit more. Repeat edge pixels, and let's just soften it up and enable all other effects. And let's just turn it on and off to see what difference it makes. Well, it does change the footage a bit. That's pretty nice. Okay, let's try something else. For example, let's try alpha levels. Let's just turn off all the other effects to see what it does. Let's just clip it like that. This will probably create some crazy looking cartoonish kind of look, I think. I'm just guessing here. No, it doesn't look right. Well, it all depends on the footage, right? And if you would do that like a couple of times, maybe you would end up with something interesting. But the point here is that you can actually change the range that you set up with Colorama using some additional effects if you need to. Also, you can put whatever you like in between copy pixels and restore, which are, just as a reminder, two instances of CC Composite. So let's just try that as well. Let's apply hue saturation. And let's just drop the saturation down to -100. Turn it on, turn it off. See, we're losing all the reds that we had here. Also pretty nice look. And just to finish this up, you can also add whatever you like after those effects, obviously. So let's just try applying some glow, which should create some nice effects if we turn up the threshold up. Sorry, 100% of course, not 1000. And let's set the radius to something bigger, a higher number. Oh yeah, this looks pretty cool. I like it a lot. Okay, so this is how this looks in comparison to the original footage. Not as interesting, right? But this, my friends, looks really cool. So I think this covers this tutorial. But I want to show you one more thing. Let's just go ahead and create an adjustment layer and copy all those effects to the adjustment layer. Surprisingly, this will work. And why do I say surprisingly? Because copy pixels, which is CC Composite, right? Just to remind you, CC Composite. It copies pixels from the layers that it is applied to. And adjustment layers do not have any pixels in them, right? Natively. They just affect everything below it. So it is very cool that CC Composite actually works with adjustment layers, because now we can just go ahead, see how long those settings work. And they are working pretty well so far. And yeah, it looks pretty good in here as well. Now, here I think I'd like to change it a little bit. So, to do that, we can just simply move forward a few frames. Okay, cut the adjustment layer here and create another instance and just move it here, right? Pretty simple. And now we can, of course, adjust the settings. See, the glow here doesn't work. It was probably what didn't work for me. And I think we can try to warm this footage up a little bit in this part. So we can try to apply photo filter that for some reason I never saw anyone actually use this. But it is a very cool filter. We've got all those presets. It's pretty much like in Photoshop. Let's try cooling filter as well. Pretty nice. And this works along with our curves and range selection and everything. And just to show you what those curves that we applied would look if we wouldn't select the range that they affect. And just turn off this and those. See? Not so cool anymore, huh? So this range selection thing is really worth it. If there's one thing that I've learned about color correction, it's that you always need to think about treating each aspect of the footage separately, at least highlights and shadows. And by the way, using Colorama, you can even treat other aspects. You can treat luminosity, you can treat each channel separately. You can, for some reason, you can treat only the reds, only the whites, only the blues, whatever you like, really. Colorama is such a powerful effect, and I really encourage you to take a closer look at it. And if for some reason you don't want to do that, just wait, because there is a tutorial coming exclusively on motionworks.com.au about Colorama. And maybe by the time you're watching it, it's already there. So go ahead and check out the website. And as far as I'm concerned, that's all for this tutorial. Hope you've enjoyed it. See you in the next one. Happy After Effecting.